Hey everybody, it's Tatiana with Back to Facts. I'm an award-winning journalist and I wanted to try and briefly give you my review of President Joe Biden's first town hall in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So my first observation is that we are doing ourselves a disservice by not watching raw videos or at least full clips longer than 30 seconds. While I do think that Biden is famous for gaffes, I think Donald Trump is famous for gaffes and things that can be misinterpreted. It's not a contest. However, I'm convinced just after watching almost the full video, because it was very long, of the town hall, that we need to suck it up and either watch the full video or listen to somebody impartial who's trained to be impartial like me. So I'm really hoping I'm going to get more people at least watching my commentaries on Biden's words, as well as making an effort to watch his raw videos, because every friend I had who did not like Donald Trump couldn't watch the inauguration, couldn't watch a rally, couldn't watch his address to NATO, couldn't watch his address to the Middle East when he was in Saudi Arabia, couldn't watch his speech to the UN. And I get it, okay? I get it. And I get it on the other side too. No, I'm not a fence sitter. I'm really trying to help people understand. So now it's Biden's turn. And whatever you think about the machine behind him or the machine behind Trump or lack thereof, or the Department of Justice and everything else that has happened, the fact is we need to make an effort to seek out counter arguments and full clips, full audio and video clips. You know, I have mixed observations. Overall, Joe Biden was much more lucid and made a lot more sense, was actually funny. He said, I'm over 30. I mean, that might be a cheap, low-hanging fruit joke, but Reagan used to joke about that all the time. Funny, and he had a lot of facts at his disposal. I'm sure he has repeated some of these facts because they are on issues that have been going on for many decades now, like the economy, the stimulus, drug offenses. There were a lot of those talking points where everybody goes, yeah, you know what? People shouldn't be put in jail for using drugs. They should be put in rehab. Yeah, so it sounds really good. He's making so much sense. But then you think, or I think, because that's my job, you think every criminal who has was caught using or possessing a small amount of drugs should go to rehab. Well, then why is it that there's only one detox center, maybe two in all of LA County, but one that's accessible to where I live, like West LA and everything? Why is it there is only one detox center that takes Medi-Cal, which is California's version of Medicaid? Why, when I tried to call for a friend of mine who was dealing with alcoholism, why is it that I could not get him in right away? And then I got calls for a year after that of people trying to sign me up. I'm assuming to get the Medicaid money. And yet the programs were far away, you name it, just not an option for the person who I was trying to help. So these are the kinds of things we need to think about. And then as far as there was a question from a female, a Black American, I guess she was a nurse or a doctor. And she asked, she said 3 to 5% of all those vaccinated are people of color. And he gave a very long answer. He said that a mistrust of the medical community in the United States because of the mistreatment and experimentation on Black Americans. This was the question where he was widely shown in a short clip to have said that, as accurately as I can, he said that, and another problem is accessibility. You have people who live in rural areas as well as inner cities who don't necessarily know how to get on the internet and who have to travel a long distance to a pharmacy or don't know how to get to a pharmacy. Now, that sounds awful. It's the same type of patronizing attitude that some people use when they're trying to argue for, quote, voting rights, but saying that the Republican Party suppresses voter votes, suppresses, prevents people from voting. That's Republicans' thing. And Republicans accuse Democrats of adding votes in of people that don't exist. And then Democrats say, well, no, you're just trying to take votes away from legitimate people. Even if you don't like those people, you think they're poor or they're immigrants, you want to take those votes away and disenfranchise them. Those are the arguments. So it was that same type of patronizing attitude about the vaccine. I don't think it's really defensible in general that is something that many, many Democrats and liberals feel, that there's enough African Americans, Black Americans around the country who are incapable of having an ID that they're going to be disenfranchised by a voter ID law. That said, he had just been talking about the elderly. And really, I think, in a way, he had that top of mind when he said they don't know necessarily how to get online, and they don't necessarily know how to get to a pharmacy. And I would back up this idea, this theory, by saying that he made a joke about how his grandchildren can get online, but, he's from the 7th century, and everybody laughed. So he needs help with it. We have to remember that, I've seen people commenting on Facebook, which is ironic because they're actually online. So maybe they're talking about their mother or somebody they read an article about. But the elderly do need help getting online on the internet, as well as remember that Seattle woman, 85-year-old Seattle woman who walked apparently 6 miles in the snow to go get vaccinated. Just a few days ago. That was a big story on maybe Monday or Tuesday. You have to understand how people hear these things, okay? People who are white, who are elderly or have elderly parents are not necessarily going to hear that he is talking down or condescendingly to people of color, biracial people, whatever, those who are underserved. I think it's important, to be fair. It's important to be fair every single time. And when we see that the majority of coverage is not fair, then I will promise you that I am going to push back and I am going to be the opposing voice. That is what I did for the last 4 years. I am going to do that now. Does that mean I'm going to, quote, like Biden? No chance in hell. No, not at all. And that is why I'm trained to do this. I listen to people's words. I am not perfect, and maybe I'm not a great judge of character, but I know when someone is being covered unfairly because they are being sliced up, taken out of context, and even lied about. Speaking of lies, we had Biden he was talking about the Department of Justice. And it was interesting because somebody asked if he was going to hold Trump and his supporters accountable for the Capitol riot, which, as we know, many, many, many people who are Democrats believe that Trump and all of his supporters are responsible for the Capitol riot. Now, I need to talk about this elsewhere, but very briefly, just so that you know where I'm coming from. I have studied what happened that day on January 6th. I was not there. I was at the march, but I was not in the building. I've studied videos. I studied photographs. I read many, 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 many articles on it. And the whole thing about Brian Sicknick, the officer, is absolutely untrue. There were tweets from CNN and media outlets saying that he had been bashed in the head and was bleeding from the head. And when he got to the hospital, he was dead. Can you believe it? That's like heart-wrenching. We read that about people who die, who we know, or people in the news, and it's just, it's a gut punch, right? Well, that was absolutely a lie. I know, it's amazing. Brian Sicknick, God rest his soul, texted his brother that night, that he thought he may have been pepper sprayed during the whole thing. He said, I'm fine. I think I may have been pepper sprayed. Now, I heard from an actual mainstream media source, relatively, Glenn Greenwald. He wrote an article about the inaccuracies. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's a pretty far left journalist. He's the one who interviewed Edward Snowden when Snowden was in London on his way to Russia, I believe. And back then he was working for The Guardian. Then he founded The Intercept, which has been a staunchly left publication up until the campaign, when he says they censored him when he was writing about Hunter Biden's laptop and the evidence found on there, which was never debunked as Russian misinformation, by the way. So back to the Capitol riot. Brian Sicknick died of a stroke. I got that from Glenn Greenwald, and I got that from one other source. The three others, one died of a stroke, one died of a heart attack, the other died being crushed by the crowd. I mean, not crushed, but she did get injured. And that was my biggest fear. Big crowds, even if they mean well. I mean, we need to teach people that more, because I have a healthy fear of that. And the fifth person was Ashley Babbitt. So, and even Brian Sicknick apparently voted for Trump. So all of them were Trump supporters. And yet we are being made to believe that this was similar to Rwanda, to a day that will live in infamy forever, to 9/11, never forget. I do know one thing. I know that there were very pushy, violent people. There were also lots of photographers. There were also really flashy people. I just went on Jake Angeli, otherwise known as Jacob Anthony Chansley, the guy with the horns. I went on his page on Backstage. He says I do hillbilly accent. That was the first thing. I do a hillbilly hick accent. He had other things that he did, and he even had a picture of him in his Norse god outfit. But the face was completely black in that picture, but it was basically showing what he could look like in different scenarios. So you had that guy, very flashy, trained actor. You had probably 200 other people who are listed on the FBI as wanted. And I think about 20 of those have been arrested. But you also have some people that are not wanted, and they're in pictures. And it's just a very interesting thing. They are prosecuting people who didn't do anything. They're prosecuting this kid from Georgia, from near Gainesville. And he was in an upper lounge, and he was looking out a window, and he was going, "Oh my God, this isn't this," and he dropped an F-bomb. "Have you ever seen anything like it? This is effing crazy, bro." And he had a sports cap on and a parka. I mean, one of the instigator, Sullivan, he had a Kevlar vest on. I mean, no one was shot. I mean, somebody's got to say it. Nothing was burned. And even according to I guess it was the indictment about this kid from Georgia, it said that it's against the law to use profanity in the Capitol. That was one of the charges against him, using profanity. It was in the spouse's lounge. He also remarked that, wow, this is going to show people we're not as violent as they want us to be, because somebody in that lounge lit a cigarette, and he was like, wow, they could light that couch on fire. But he was saying it like, thank God we're not doing that. Nothing was set on fire. So I just want you to know there are tons and tons of facts about this. Definitely not enough to indict an entire movement, especially considering that, I don't know, somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people were at the march, which was a block and a half away, and they weren't even at the Capitol, including me. I was covering it as a journalist. I was walking toward it, and I saw like a smoke bomb, like a red smoke bomb go off. I saw that same smoke bomb at an Antifa protest in Sacramento a couple weeks later, around the inauguration. It was the same. It was pink. It was a pink, reddish smoke bomb. And Antifa actually went because they were expecting protesters. Still, in spite of all that happened in the Capitol, they were expecting white supremacists, which is not synonymous with Trump supporters. No, it's not. But I'll get into that another time. Biden kept apologizing. That's one thing. He apologized even before I had to turn it off like 20 times for taking too long to answer the question. You go, and again, I apologize for this. I apologize for, talking on about this, but it's really, really important, means a lot to me. When they asked him he was going to hold Trump and his supporters accountable for the riot. Very interesting. It was like, wow, how classy. He wants unity, because he said, no, I don't think so. Unlike the previous president. We are not going to politicize the Justice Department, which was politicized under him, under Trump, more than it ever had in the entire history of the country. So that is up for debate, considering the fact that both attorneys general under Trump didn't do what he wanted them to do. First of all, what he suggested or asked them to do, whatever it was. And at the very end, William Barr claimed there was no evidence of election fraud, which was just plain wrong. I mean, which is politicized? And, it sounds like a little bit of projection to me, just from everything I've studied. So I did not like that at all. And what I want to say is this guy knows his stuff, okay? He repeats the lie of Charlottesville, saying that Trump said Nazis were very fine people. He repeats, the exaggeration, frankly, of the emotional component, of the racial component of police interactions with Black Americans. I am not minimizing any event involving a young Black American and the police. I just think that there are reasons that people act the way that they do. Every situation should be assessed on its own merit. If you magnify something bigger than, let's say, a similar incident with someone who is of the majority, a white person, and you don't clarify, you don't put context around it, you are causing more division. There's a responsibility there. Biden he's not using responsibility. Just there's too much to even go into. He said that political experts say that he's inherited the worst situation in the history of the country. I thought it was funny because around mid-February, oh my God, it's February 17th. This is the anniversary of Trump's famous press conference in the East Room on February 17th, 2017, when he first took office. First year, it was like a few days before the State of the Union, and it was freewheeling. In fact, the headlines were like, 57 minutes of lunacy. But actually, I watched the whole thing and I wrote an article on how he was pleading for some reasonableness, not to have such hatred in the articles. And they just went, not they, everyone, every columnist, every mainstream media article went, over the top. And one of the things they had a problem with was that he said he inherited a mess. Now, that mess is still not acknowledged by, anybody in the most of the media, okay, who has a job, and by everyone who voted for Joe Biden. They did not think that he inherited a mess. Remember when I was talking about minimum wage? I was talking about the quality of jobs. There were no jobs like that. Remember how people say, the unemployment numbers don't really mean much, or he really didn't bring factories back. No, if you look, like the manufacturing sector in America, it grew by like 400%. I'm not kidding. The reason that, the economy didn't grow by that much is because the retail industry is going down because of online ordering, Amazon, etc. And so there was like a balance with that. But the recovery Trump oversaw was absolutely incredible. I have friends, people of color, they were doing better under him than they ever had. And so all I am trying to say is that Biden was lying, and that the press, at least I didn't see any blowback after that, did not hold him accountable for saying he inherited the worst mess ever. Well, I wonder what that mess is. Oh yeah, it's COVID, it's lockdowns, and it's funny, he was talking about waiting, that it probably will be over in a year, the epidemic, and how we need to achieve herd immunity, and he's ordered 600 million vaccines. Enough to vaccinate everyone in the country. I think there's 330 million people in the United States, and they would need, 2 stages. So still not enough, Joe. No, I'm kidding. I'm really kidding, okay? There's a lot about the vaccine that we don't know. It's a personal choice, but it is unique, and we really don't know what it will do in that it involves messenger RNA. So you can do your research on that, but that is my assessment of Joe Biden's first town hall. And one more thing, I thought the first 2 people who asked a question looked so much alike, I had to take a double take and rewind it. That was just a weird, random observation. Please give me your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear it. Please don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button or the follow button or the like button if you're on Facebook or Instagram. And of course on YouTube, please tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss the next assessment of the real story. Thank you for watching. See you soon.